Hi everybody, welcome to News Without Borders. This is the pilot test. My name's Sean Menzies.
Chris Bawley.
Paul McConnell.
So we started this project mainly because we felt that our point of views weren't really represented in the mainstream media. So we've tried to create another narrative, another perspective on things where we just discuss topics that are happening at the moment. Any other reasons?
I think you're bang on. If your perspective is not represented, well then you get your own perspective out there. Obviously with the age of social media, hopefully we're going to find a lot of like-minded people who are going to be able to not only listen, but hopefully contribute their views as well. I think we're going to want to be as inclusive as possible in creating a debate.
Yep.
I think for me personally, largely I read news on the surface. I don't tend to go into things too much. What does capture my interest, I do look more into. For example, the political events over the summer, the first time that I've actually really become involved and interested. But overall, I really found a passion there and something I want to continue.
So also we're all coming at it from different angles, different parts of the political spectrum as well. So we're going to try and give a nice range of views as well. And of course, feel free to contribute.
Okay, well, I've got a little test for you guys. See if you've been paying attention to politics in the last month or so. So I'm going to read a quote, very important quote from a politician, and you've got to tell me who this is, okay? When we take the big calls, we'll think not of the powerful, but you. When we pass new laws, we'll listen not to the mighty, but to you. When it comes to taxes, we'll prioritise not the wealthy, but you. When it comes to opportunity, we won't entrench the advantages of the fortunate few. We will do everything we can to help anybody, whatever your background, to go as far as your talents will take you.
I think, sounds like Hitler to me.
Hitler? Close but no cigar.
I have no idea.
You have no idea? Okay, I'll give you one or two more.
All right.
That means fighting against the burning injustice that if you're born poor, you will die on average 9 years earlier than others. If you're black, you're treated more harshly by the criminal justice system than if you're white. If you're a white working class boy, you're less likely than anybody else in Britain to go to university. Big speech in the last month.
It sounds like something from the left, something who has
to be something from the left.
some kind of.
Jeremy Corbyn?
I would guess.
It is,
like that.
it is, of course, to any attentive political viewers, Theresa May.
Wow.
Theresa May's speech, first speech as Prime Minister. So, thoughts on that? It sounds like the left, doesn't it? It sounds like a socialist speech.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've seen a lot. It's interesting. We've seen a lot of very socialist suggestions coming from the Conservatives since May took over. We've seen, obviously, for example, they're talking about building more social housing. They're talking about expanding welfare as well, adding a stimulus to the economy as well, fiscal stimulus. So it all sounds wonderful. It sounds like.
Okay. So you're saying.
Believe them, that's the.
What about you?
I'm actually quite pleasantly surprised because the right has generally been stereotyped as I suppose you've got Boris Johnson, David Cameron, the Eatons of the world, the Oxfords, the Cambridge and so on and so forth. So to hear someone from the Conservative Party, an opening speech as Prime Minister, using that kind of rhetoric, appealing almost to a wider market rather than thinking of a very narrow market, suggests actually that some people I think voted for Theresa May because she didn't come from the same background as David Cameron, didn't come from the...
Nobody voted for Theresa May.
No, within the party. Or the backing within the party even actually, yes, of course. But I think it's evident in that speech that some of the backing she had within the party, because she was different, because she was slightly alternative from what we've seen recently, it could well turn out to be true.
But, I mean, you said she's appealing to a wider market, right? Maybe that's good, but to me, maybe that's kind of the problem. I mean, I look at her voting record and I just don't see anything to back up this kind of talk. So, yeah. I mean, I think an important question for me, you can say, okay, good, it's promising. I'm hopeful. I want to see more of that. But I'm not convinced. The question I have for you guys is the language of politicians now so detached from their practical policies that you can't even tell who's speaking? Can I want more freedom? I want justice for everybody. I mean, does everyone just sound the same? Are they all just speaking in meaningless, phrases which you can't tell what it is they actually want or what they want to do with their policy and power?
Well, I mean, first thing to say about that is it's all rhetoric. given the fact that it's so generalised, there's very little talk of specific policies, in particular coming from May from the last few weeks since she's been in office. But also you can say, what you're talking about, you can see that from the Labour leadership race that's going on at the moment between Owen and Corbyn. They're essentially saying the same thing, but the only way you can really know whether one's, where you can tell the liar from the truth teller is their voting record, their record in the past, and that's something that...
Is it always lies and truth, though? I mean, do you think that all these politicians...
It's honesty and disingenuousness.
To what extent what they say matches up with what they've done. So, I mean, okay, so her voting record is very general, but I mean, what has she done in the last week that suggests that she's going to be more progressive? I think one thing that shows progressivism potentially, I don't know about progressivism, but she's talked about an industrial strategy, right? Bringing back, hopefully, less inequality of development, all focused on London. But I mean, is that a continuation of what George Osborne was saying with the Northern Powerhouse, or is she offering something new? I mean, it's difficult to say.
Well, there's Hammond a few days ago, or whenever it was, 4 or 5 days ago, who said that the industrialisation, the moving the industry outside of London, of the capital, and addressing this disparity between the production, the industrial production within, or the production in general in London, and the productivity of the rest of the country, and is saying that if that bridge can be addressed, can be narrowed somewhat, then you're looking at a 9% increase in GDP. I don't know where he's getting that figure. It sounds like he's pulling it straight out of his arse. I guess we'll see. We'll look at the record, some conservative think tank.
I mean, more than anything, speaking all the way across boundaries, what I would like to see when she talks about we are going to listen to you, the vast majority of people, is we're going to see an end to a form of government which has developed over the last 30 years, which is basically business advises on everything. So business is now an integral part of the public sphere. There's no real boundary anymore. The regulators are staffed by people from their industry, and there's lots of people from corporations on secondment inside the public sphere. And whenever you see a new advisory committee on what's going to happen, it's all members of the business community and not really any voices from the type of community she's talking about, from low to middle income families or businesses for that matter. So I think if we want to see one thing new from her, backing up what she said, that's what we want to see. We want to see, and she has mentioned, I think, workers on boards. Has anyone heard anything about that?
The shared equity idea.
Putting workers on boards. That's something they do in Germany, I believe they've been doing for a long time.
Yeah, in the States there's a few examples as well. There's an interesting study about that. But that's one thing that Corbyn's ultimately, I don't think he's said it yet, but it's definitely something he's propagated throughout his career, is the idea that workers should take, a very socialist idea, that workers should play a lot bigger role in the governance of corporations. But I agree, I think it's interesting to look at the Bank of England's reaction to, their decision to reduce interest rates to, was it 0.25%, something incredibly low, basically zero. And to look at
I thought it was already low. I thought it was already like the lowest.
Well, there was negative interest rates. That could still happen, I guess. But at the moment, they're avoiding the shock factor and going down a little bit further to zero. But interestingly, they're talking about as well a £6 billion stimulus extension of quantitative easing, which is obviously printing money and pumping it through the banks, and I hope that it will filter down somehow into trickle-down economics.
But this is just the same again, isn't it? Because QE the last time benefited the top 10% of society more than anyone else. Mm-hmm. Criticised heavily for that. We're not seeing any difference in terms of stimulus there, are we?
Exactly. And the $1 billion they suggest as well going to corporate bonds, that they're going to buy up corporate bonds. So it'll be either corporations or banks. That's the way economics is at the moment. That's the way conservative economics is at the moment. And it'll be interesting to see. I think that's going to be the litmus test for May, is how she... If she intends to in any way shake things up and actually detract a little bit from the private sector, pump money into the public sector, or find other means other than the economic system that's been employed thus far, to find another a way that the gains of the economy, which aren't very great at the moment, but the gains of the economy will filter down somehow into the working class, into the vast majority of the population.
Ha-Joon Chang, the Cambridge economist, probably sitting close to where we are now, I imagine, said that basically looking at the economy adjusted for inflation or something along the lines. Forgive me, economics is not my strong point at the best of times, but essentially that the economy hasn't really grown.
Yeah, I think growth's
since the financial crisis.
0.4%, down from 0.6.
I mean, this is the responsible, safe hands economics. Labour's traditionally not trusted on economics, but this is what they've delivered us. So she can't continue on the same lines, but they've been continuing on the same lines for the last 30 years, so maybe they can.